Hi everyone and welcome to my video on White Lotus Season 3 Episode 1, Same Spirit's New Form. I love White Lotus, so of course I'm going to review the show. One of the things that I love about the show and that interests me the most is the relationship between the tourist industry and the native population. Now this is a point where I started to do a lot of research on Thai tourism and its effect on the native population, but I didn't get a lot in there. The only thing I get from this particular episode is I do think that there is going to be some form of a conversation about tourists' relationship with the nature of Thailand, particularly because we get so many shots about the beautiful scenery, the native populations of monkeys, etc., that are really cool, and we get a lot of different references to the animals that live there. Okay, I will say though that this particular premiere of all the White season premieres was, I felt, the weakest to me. The characters are meant to be manifestation of certain social stereotypes, but in season 1 and 2, I felt the characters managed to make the stereotypes feel real and tangible. But I had a bit of trouble truly investing in the characters presented in this particular episode. So I feel really left out because it seems like everyone is really hype about this show. They're really excited, and I just feel like there's a weakness. With that being said, reviewers who have had access to the entire season have said that this is a great, phenomenal season of White Lotus. So maybe this is just the first episode, itch that I sometimes get. So hopefully it gets better. And of course has one of my favorite actors of all time, Carrie Coon. So I have no doubt that this is going to do for me what it needs to do. This review is going to go through the episode by groups of people. There is a lot, so please hang in there with me. And I'm hoping that the other episodes are easier to go through since there won't be as much to establish with the characters. So I think this episode also kind of in a way felt overwhelming because of all the characters. I knew who the characters were, but I couldn't name all of them. So in writing the script, I'm very comfortable with the names now. Before I get into the nitty gritty, I want to take into account the title of this episode, Same Spirit's New Forms, which may hint that the spirit of past characters will appear in these new characters. And we'll see. And there are some parallels between past seasons and this season in the characters and the conflicts that they seem to be having. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, so there are some beautiful shots of Thai nature, and after that, the episode opens with Zion, who we later learn is Belinda's son. Belinda, who we saw in season 1 and 2. And he is doing a meditation session with Amrita. Zion mentions he's stressed because he's finishing finals and some other stuff. We don't know what that other stuff is, but we can assume that Belinda is also not aware, and that other stuff may be relevant to the plot. While meditating, shots are fired, which requires Amrita and Zion to take cover. However, Zion is focused on confirming the safety of his mother. Belinda is one of the only characters I currently have affection for, so I'll be extremely upset if anything happens to her or Zion. First of all, they're two very good-looking people, and yeah, I don't think, it's not like because you're good-looking you shouldn't die, but because you're good looking, you shouldn't die. Anyway, this may also be commentary about how people find places like Thailand dangerous, but I suspect that it will just be one of the guests who's responsible for the shooting as opposed to the Thailand native. So this is something that people often say when they compare, for example, going to Europe or going to Thailand. A lot of people think Thailand and Southeast Asia is generally dangerous. But yeah, I think that this show might be commentary about how the natives are perceived to these outsiders. Anyway, Belinda is the first quote unquote guest we see approaching the boat. We understand that she's not really a guest, but once Belinda is at the hotel, we learn that she's hoping to bring aspects of the Thailand Wellness Center to the White Lotus Maui branch. This tells us that while she had to give up on building something of her own when Tanya, she's still able to be in her desired line of work. Belinda is clearly scared of Thai animals, which makes her trigger happy, and potentially that might be relevant for future episodes. Let's see. She gives an offering for good luck and protection. The scene lingers here after Belinda accidentally smacks her bracelet on the way out. I wonder if this is going to be relevant as well. Is she going to get that good luck and protection? We will have to wait and see. And then the last scene that we see of Belinda is that she sees a black couple as guests of the hotel. She says hello. I learned through internet sleuthing that the black couple is they were actually participants in Survivor. And so those who don't know, Mike White was on Survivor. He loves that reality TV show, and he actually thinks that White Lotus is sort of a real life version of Survivor. And he basically feels like all humans are basically on their own variation of the Survivor show in terms of the sort of social networks we have to navigate, as well as just trying to survive and live. All right, the next big, and this is really literal, the next big part of the plot is the Ratliff family. So the Ratliff family has 5 members, all taking vacation to Thailand, deciding to follow the middle child, Piper, who is doing a thesis research on Buddhism, and she's also a senior at UNC Chapel Hill, which will be relevant. We're introduced to them on the boat with the 3 children sitting together but not interacting. The father, Timothy, / Tim, played by Jason Isaac, is bothered by the cigarette smoke from another guest, Rick, played by Walter Goggins. Saxon, the oldest son, played by Patrick Schwarzenegger, joins his parents primarily to berate Rick about his smoking. Saxon and Rick almost get into a physical altercation, but it's calmed down before that comes. At the hotel, we are assaulted by Parker Posey's and Jason Isaac's attempt at a North Carolina accent. I feel kind of mean. I wrote that in the script because I genuinely paused the show. I did not know what accent Jason Isaac was going for. And for those who don't know, Jason Isaac, who plays Timothy, is a British man. And I've heard him do really good, like, middle American accents. But for some reason, when he started talking, I genuinely thought he was Australian. I have been to North Carolina a lot. I did travel soccer as a kid. Yes, I was born and raised in South Florida, but we were in North Carolina a lot. And I heard a lot of North Carolinians. I just don't feel like he sounds like that. And even Parker Posey as well. She sounds like someone who's trying really hard to do a Southern accent. And yes, that's the truth. These are both 2 individuals without Southern accents taking on Southern accents. But my problem here is that they sound like they are trying, which it shouldn't sound like that, right? It should sound like it's natural. Anyway, it was really frustrating for me. And whatever. I did not like the accents, and I've gotten used to it now, but I'm still upset. Anyway, we learned the family are proud North Carolinians who have attended the most prestigious universities in the state. Victoria, the mother, she went to UNC. Tim went to Duke. Saxon also went to Duke. Piper went to UNC, and now Lachlan is choosing between both UNC and Duke. And so that's a huge part of Lachlan's story, is that he's a senior in high school and he's trying to decide which university to go to. Okay, so the health mentor for the Ratliff family is Pam. I always feel the need to say Ratcliffe, even though I know it's Ratliff. Anyway, we learned that Saxon works for his father, so that's important. Again, I'm going to talk about my loser theory with him, but anyway, we learned there's 3 bedrooms, so 2 siblings are going to have to share a room. Saxon assumes that Lachlan will sleep with him, but when Piper says she doesn't mind sharing with Lachlan, Saxon says it's weird for siblings of the opposite sex to sleep in the same room since they have full-grown genitals. So here we have a hint at Saxon's general social perversion. He's a weirdo, and this will unfortunately not be the last time that we see it. The family is upset to learn that the hotel attempts to reduce cell phone use. Pam also tells them that the seeds of the pong pong tree growing outside of their hotel suite is fatally poisonous. So again, important hint to keep mind of. We see that Lachlan is torn between his siblings and their disparate interests, as well as his parents' different ideas on what university he should attend. At the pool, Saxon, like some animal predator, stalks for prey he could flirt with. He lands on Chelsea, but does not make an explicit move on her. At the Buddhist temple, Piper refuses to go in. There's something about Piper's hesitation that comes off as fear. So I wonder if she really has this thesis, if maybe this is just some self-exploration thing. We don't know, but I think this whole thesis cover might be more complicated than we really know it to be. Victoria asks why Piper is interested in Buddhism and not Christianity. And this is when Victoria and Timothy are preparing and unpacking in their room. Tim then gets a call from Wall Street Journal. We are also introduced to Victoria clearly being some form of pill popper. The show is not explicit on which drugs Victoria takes, but we do know that she takes lorazepam and some other downers because she's always kind of trying to go to sleep. It'll be interesting to see how the pill popping affects the plot in this season. Maybe she'll become a witness to something important, but because of her intoxication, she can't remember. At the pool, Saxon tries to talk up the toxic friend group. That's what I named them, the 3 older women who are also in the show. who he automatically describes as cougars, which, again, not the case. It seems like all three of them are in relationships, but even in that, it doesn't seem like they're cougars at all. And Chelsea, we'll learn later, is a part of that couple with Rick. Everyone rejects him. Saxon tells Lachlan that it's just a numbers game. At dinner, we learn that Piper has yet to set an interview with the monk. Lachlan makes clear he is debating between Duke and USC. His father thinks the decision is already made, so his father clearly has that masculine feeling. His other son already went to Duke, so I feel like there's this intensity where his father is saying go to Duke, and Lachlan is a people pleaser, and so in this episode we already see two situations where it's very difficult for him to please both people. Okay, Timothy finally takes the call from the Wall Street Journal journalist who asked about a fund he made with a Kenneth Gwynn called Show Kell. So Show Kell is the fund that Timothy made with Kenneth Gwynn. Wall Street Journal is looking into Kenneth's relationship with the Brunei government. Tim claims he has not spoken to Ken for 4 years, but then after the call with the Wall Street Journal, immediately leaves a message to Ken. Tim bumps into Rick, and again, there's some tension between them. I believe this scandal may be similar to the Joe Low scandal, where Joe Low is this Malaysian man who embezzled billions of dollars from the Malaysian government. Low was able to get away with the scandal by making powerful friends around the world who implicitly legitimized his income, as well as banks, of course, doing some shenanigans as well. Brunei is in the same geographic corridor as Thailand, so I wonder if we'll see Kenny or if Tim is going to try to see him, because it wouldn't take that long for either of them to visit each other between Thailand and Brunei. Also, I think there's a father-son relationship here, right? Because Saxon asks briefly, do you need help with anything? Implying that if Timothy's business goes down, since Saxon works for his father, he's also going to go down. So the Madoff situation, for those of you who don't know, it was actually his sons who outed him, who told the federal government about the Ponzi scheme. Unfortunately, one of them died by suicide, and then another one died later from cancer. But yeah, that was a huge tragedy as a result of Bernie Madoff's massive Ponzi scheme back in 2008, 2009. So interesting to see if there might be a similar relationship between Timothy and Saxon. Okay, as the Ratliffs prepared for sleep, we see Piper listening to an audiobook of a monk saying, identity is a prison that we lock ourselves inside. So maybe she's dealing with identity, what that has to do with herself and her relationship to her family. In Saxon and Lachlan's room, Saxon comments on how hot his sister is and how he thinks she's still a virgin, which is really weird. Like, to comment on the hotness of your sibling is just so out of whack, especially if it's not like, oh my god, she looks so beautiful when she went to prom or was at graduation, or in that context he's just saying that she's hot and he doesn't think that she's had sex yet. And he has this really reductive way of thinking. I'll go into it later, but he seems like somebody who's kind of lost touch with reality. Anyway, he derides the Buddhist religion and touts the benefits of wanting things. Lachlan makes clear that he doesn't know what he wants, which we knew. Anyway, Saxon asks Lachlan what kind of porn he likes and decides he will jerk off in the bathroom. We get an iconic White Lotus full frontal scene, although this does not feel as impactful as the past White Lotus full frontal. So in season 1 and season 2, we got a full frontal, male full frontals. But in season 1, I felt like it was more relevant and impactful. Season 2, yeah, that was also more impactful. But here in the first episode, I don't know. I felt nothing really. But I think it is because this particular character's full frontal, we're just supposed to be kind of disgusted at him. Anyway, my theory is that Saxon is a lonely red pillar who occupies a lot of his time with internet consumption. He comes off as a bit removed from reality. If he had a real friend group, he wouldn't act the way that he does, because while I know men can be creeps, it's hard to think that Saxon's behavior would be accepted in most friend groups. This also explains why he desires to spend time with his brother, because his brother is probably his only source of true social connection. I think loneliness in its different presentations will be the theme of the show. And I think it's interesting because Saxon, one from the outside looking in, might say he's just a creepy, gregarious guy. But there's a lot of, there's so many hints of extreme loneliness. And I don't think that this is a person who has any friends. Anyway, I also don't like that people are interpreting the jerk-off scene as gay incest. I understand that there's undertones of that, But I think it's a little bit more complicated. I think Saxon is peacocking for his little brother, which again shows the dearth of his social connection. Like, nobody, I don't know, peacocking for your siblings, while I know that that definitely does happen, the way that Saxon is peacocking, he's like peacocking for his peers and not for his little brother. Like, he doesn't have to convince his little brother that he's cool, but he's still trying to do that. And he's doing it in a context and in a way that I know Lachlan's like, this is weird. This is not cool at all. Anyway, the last scene with the rat lifts is that we see Tim and Victoria on the bed discussing Rick. Victoria posits that Rick is just jealous of Tim, and Tim clearly feels guilty about the things Victoria doesn't know of his business, which is clearly on the rocks. All right, let's get to that toxic friend group with Jacqueline, Lori, and Kate. Our first introduction is seeing them on the boat laughing together. We will learn later that this collective laughter is likely a performance. Shritala directly introduces herself to Jacqueline, who is an actress on a popular TV show. Jacqueline is on a trip with her two childhood friends, Kate and Lori. However, I think there's a lot of indication that they are not in regular contact with each other. We do know that they don't live in the same city, that there's different socioeconomic conditions for all of them, but it makes me feel like Jacqueline is lonelier than one would assume a high-profile actress would be, since she has to pay for a vacation with childhood friends whom she has a tenuous relationship with, right? Like, you would think if you're going on vacation, especially at this age, like I'm not even as old as these women, but at my age, I'm not going on vacation with people I'm sort of kind of like. I'm going on vacation if I truly feel like you're going to be a great vacation buddy, and it seems like all these three women like covertly hate each other. So to want to go onto this trip and then like be like, I need to take friends with me, and you're taking these two women who you clearly don't really know all that well since you've only really talked to them in childhood, is an indication to me that there's something going on with Jacqueline, and that Jacqueline is, one, trying to run away from something, and two, probably doesn't have as strong of a social network as she makes it out to be. Okay, the group is assigned Valentine, a handsome Russian, as their health mentor. Also, important to note that Jacqueline says everyone in LA is talking about the resort. So I'm just bringing that up because that might be a reason why she's going, right? People are saying, oh, you should just go with a group of your girlfriends. It's amazing. It's awesome. And she probably was like, girlfriends? Which girlfriends do I have? And so, unfortunately, she knew she could drag along Gloria and Kate, who would be admiring of her acting status. Anyway, Lori is exploring their suite and sees monkeys in the trees, which she goes and tells her friends about. Jacqueline is anxious about her friends' satisfactions with their rooms. Jacqueline and Kate engage in a strange back and forth about their looks and say nothing about Lori until she makes clear that she feels left out. Lori takes a large sip of alcohol, clearly stressed about the circumstances of the vacation. So this is another point I just want to say. I'm going off script here. There is Carrie Coon. I don't know. I'm being so mean. I feel like Carrie Coon is the best looking out of all of them. She feels most natural. Maybe that's just me speaking, but I could see how Jacqueline and Kate have more of a glam and Hollywood look, whereas Lori looks more woman next door beauty. It's not necessarily a look that you would automatically associate with glam and like trophy wife, but to me it's objectively very beautiful. But yeah, I've never understood this way of like taking three objectively very beautiful women and putting them together and being like, can't you tell the difference? I don't know. Sometimes I'm gonna sound so mean, but like sometimes I feel like white women do this all the time, where they'll be like, oh my god, she was so pale, or did you see her roots or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know what you see. I just see a beautiful woman. But I think within certain social contexts you could, I don't know, determine whether or not someone's good looking enough for you. But apparently Lori does not meet the mark, even though I personally think that she does. Okay. At dinner, they reference a story about where they formed a big body with Jacqueline obviously at the head. Shritala comes to their table and talks about her past career in acting and singing. We learn that Shritala is a pioneer in the wellness space in Thailand due to her desire to find a homeopathic solution to her autoimmune disease. Lori asks Jacqueline if it's weird being famous. Kate expands on how she has to question the motives of people due to her husband's wealthy status. Kate and Jacqueline seem more socioeconomic aligned. Note, Jacqueline calls Kate's kids gorgeous, but then when we get to Lauren, Jacqueline says nothing concrete except that everything Lori does is so hard. Okay, we know that Lori's in some corporate And I will say I was confused because I'm like, okay, if Lori is doing something corporate, isn't that impressive? What does that mean? Or is she like somebody, I don't know. Maybe it's her position in corporate or the fact that she works a normal job, because Jacqueline is a actress. Kate, we know, we're assuming that she's some housewife, but a very wealthy housewife. But is it the fact that Lori works a quote unquote normal job that makes her sort of like, I don't know, sort of worse? I don't know. I feel like anybody who works a normal job is impressive. Anyway, Kate calls Lori's daughter a cool girl. Again, contrasting this with the conversation about Kate's daughter being gorgeous. Anyway, Lori excuses herself by saying she has to go to sleep, but before retreating to her room, she cries after seeing Jacqueline and Kate continue to bond. She feels like the odd one out, and I would say to Lori that I feel like all three of y'all hate each other. Y'all just have not reconciled with that. All three of you guys are also desperate. Jacqueline is desperate for inviting her childhood friends to a vacation, even though she does not have a strong relationship with them. Lori is desperate for accepting, and as well Kate, right? If you guys are busy, if you guys have awkward relationships, regardless of the status that you feel that Jacqueline holds, you guys, sometimes you just have to hold things down and be like, it will be a bad experience for me just to tag along with this little group. All right. Anyway, let's get into Rick and Chelsea. So Rick rejects the flower bracelets offered to the group upon arrival. Mook is assigned as the couple's health mentor. So I think that this couple is going to be far more important because it's Lisa from Blackpink who's playing Mook. So she's going to clearly play a more central role than we're probably seeing at the outset. Anyway, we learned that the couple travel a lot because Rick barely works and Chelsea was a yoga teacher. There are a lot of hints that White Lotus is not their normal level of accommodation. So, despite the fact that this show tends to focus on more affluent individuals or people who are friends with affluent individuals, Rick and Chelsea seem to be people who really just don't live like this or can afford these types of vacations on a regular basis. Or at all, quite frankly. Rick asks Mook if Shwetala's husband, Jim Hollinger, is at the hotel. Mook says that Hollinger was sick and after recovery went back to Bangkok. Rick says of course he is, indicating that there is possibly a pre-existing relationship between Rick and Jim. Rick makes clear that he has ulterior motives and implies that he can't go to Australia for legal reasons. Chelsea doesn't know, at dinner, Chelsea doesn't know that the waiter is asking her to taste the wine as opposed to providing her serving. Again, an indication of her foreignness to high dining. Chelsea says she will get Rick's joy back even if it kills her, and unfortunately that might be a foreboding, but hopefully not. There have been forebodings in season 1 and season 2, and usually that doesn't actually end up the way that the audience think that it will. Rick is on his phone looking at a photo of Jim Hollinger longingly. After Rick abandons Chelsea at dinner, Chelsea goes to the bar where she meets Chloe, a model. She makes a slightly shady comment about Chelsea's teeth, and I'm just going to make a slight comment here. I know that everyone in Hollywood loves their little cheeklet veneers, but I love a natural smile. Yes, she does have an overbite, but I think it's very endearing. I'm just tired of veneer cheeklets and mouths. So Chelsea and Chloe connect because both of their boyfriends are hiding from them. Chloe says she and her boyfriend have lived in a villa above the hotel for a year. And that's when we learn that her boyfriend is Greg. So let's rewind. Who is Greg? Greg was the guy who courted Tanya in season 1 at Maui, and then we learned that they got married by the time that Tanya appears in season 2 in Italy. And so the interesting thing that we do know about Greg is that Greg essentially orchestrated Tanya's murder. We know that Greg and the head gay from season 2, Quentin, basically colluded to kill Tanya so that Greg could inherit all of Tanya's estate. So he's an evil and bad dude. And not only did he kill Tanya, but we also know that he probably is feeling the guilt of killing at least 3 to 4 other people as a result of Tanya trying to defend herself, kill all these people, and then she died just because she fell on a boat. So Greg is a very dangerous person. And I do think it's important to note as well how Greg tried to make himself seem so sincere in season 1. And to an extent, I think a lot of the audience believed his riffraff, but we could see in the aesthetics of Chloe that he actually has the aesthetics that, you know, the aesthetics for Chloe. He never really loved Tanya. He never really was attracted to Tanya. And so here we see that. Anyway, he's a murderer. All right, Greg is a murderer and he's on this season, so we need to keep a close eye to him. And also, what a weird thing to live for a year above a White Lotus branch when you know that you were responsible for killing someone for like over a year because of that. But actually, no, I just remembered he probably inherited Tanya's like special status at White Lotus, so maybe that's why he also goes down there and he decided to live close to a White Lotus branch. I don't know, whatever, the guy's a creep and we should keep an eye on him, and I hope he goes to jail and rots for the rest of his life. Chloe does introduce the term LBH, which is losers back home, which for me, I'm like, Chloe, so why are you dating a loser back home? But regardless, that's what Chelsea also says Rick is, which I really agree with, and I'm sure that is the case. So outside of the questions about Rick's ulterior motives, I'm also wondering why Rick and Chelsea are together. Their energies are so opposite. They have such a huge age gap. I want to know why they're together and how long they've been together. There's just so many questions about this couple. Even though it's definitely a classic trope of the very energetic girlfriend and sort of the depressed, lonely boyfriend, I just want to know more details to kind of feel like the relationship has a motive for being together. All right, let's get into the hotel staff. Very beautiful people, by the way, that's in the hotel staff. We are first introduced to Mook, played by Lisa of Blackpink, whose bike is broken and and she needs to get a ride for Guy Took. I'm not going to pronounce Thai words correctly. I'm going to try as much as I can, but I'm really bad at pronouncing words in foreign languages. Anyway, they do have a joking rapport, but it seems like Mook is unaware that Guy Took obviously has a crush on her. We learned that Mook is a health mentor and Guy Tuk is at the front post security guard. So I'm assuming that Mook actually makes, and I know that this is weird, but Mook makes more money than Guy Tuk, because Guy Tuk is a security guard, whereas Mook is directly interacting with the guests, which usually requires more skill and therefore probably more money. Mook talks to the Hollingers' private security guards, who seem pissed when Guy Tok interrupts their conversation. Guy Tok warns that the guards are arrogant, and while Mook knows, she's envious that their job allows them to travel and see the world. Guy Tok brags about having saved a Belgian man 2 years ago because he wants to show that his job also has worth and value. Mook seems like one of those women who knows she's beautiful and that people may talk to her simply for her beauty, but maintains agency by never making anyone aware that she's cognizant of that dynamic and knows that more people will vie for her and protect her if she keeps that dynamic for a long time. So I think there's this kind of thought process that a lot of beautiful women are genuinely ditzy and they don't know that men are trying to talk to them because they're beautiful. But I think they know that. And even if they aren't seriously considering pursuing a relationship or anything like that, they understand that if they build a good connection with somebody, that is much more likely to help them in the future in the long run than it is to be sort of more antagonistic, which I do think is another route that very beautiful women take. Anyway, I think that what we see from Mook is just her surface level. We don't know too much about her, but I am getting the sense that she's much, much smarter than she looks. And I wonder if that will get her in trouble if she reveals to other people how smart she actually is. Okay, Shritala is the co-owner of White Lotus Branch. She delays the boat in order to extend her beauty routine. She comes off as a little sketchy to me. And definitely Jim Hollinger and his relationship with Rick is also weird. So it will be interesting to see what Shritala looks like in the long run. But I just thought about this. I was going to talk about how Fabian is very muted compared to the impact of Armand and Valentina from season 1 and season 2. Fabian is just a jumble of anxious energy and he doesn't feel fully realized. But now that I think about it, I think Shritala is actually a stand-in for the manager role. And I think that she's going to be the equivalent of Armand and Valentina from season 1 and season 2. But anyway, I do kind of feel like Fabian might not be that impactful, but considering he's a manager, and in the past 2 seasons, the manager of White Lotus are very significant to the plot, we should keep an eye on him, but I do hope that they flesh him out a little bit more and make him more than anxiety. Anyway, really excited to see where this season takes us. Thailand is a huge topic to come up against. It'll be very interesting to see how they navigate certain cultural differences, but there's so much up in the air and there's so many different directions to take. And I know that Mike White, a very talented director and writer, is going to make this as entertaining as possible. So thank you for watching this video. This was Strategic Delusion. Good night.